Hello, buddy. Welcome back to the Tin Man's Corner channel. I'm your host, Jeffrey Tin Man Taylor. Today, I'm going to be reading another chapter out of my Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde book. And chapter 9 is called Dr. Lanyon's Narrative. So, after this chapter, there's chapter 10. And that's it. So, we're almost home free on this book. On the 9th of January, now 4 days ago, I received by the evening delivery a registered envelope addressed in the hand of my colleague and old school companion, Henry Jekyll. I was a good deal surprised by this, for we were by no means in the habit of correspondence. I had seen the man dine with him, indeed, the night before, and I could imagine nothing in our intercourse that should justify formality of registration. The contents increased my wonder, for this how the letter ran. 10th of December. Dear Lanyon, you are one of my oldest friends, and although we may have differed at times on scientific questions, I cannot remember, at least on my side, any break in our affection. There was never a day when, if you had said to me, Jekyll, my life, my honor, my reason depend upon you, I would not have sacrificed my left hand to help you, Lanyon. My life, my honor, my reason are all at your mercy. If you fail me tonight, I am lost. You might suppose after this preface that I am going to ask you for something dishonorable to grant. Judge for yourself. I want you to postpone all other engagements for tonight. Even if you were summoned to the bedside of an emperor. To take a cab, unless your carriage should be actually at the door, and with this letter in your hand for consultation, to drive straight to my house. Poole, my butler, has his orders. You will find him waiting your arrival with a locksmith. The door of my cabinet is then to be forced, and you are to go in alone to open the glazed pressed letter E on the left hand, breaking the lock if it be shut, and to draw out with all its contents as they stand. The fourth drawer from the top, or which is the same thing, the third from the bottom. In my extreme distress of mind, I have a morbid fear of misdirecting you, but even if I am in error, you may know the right drawer by its contents. Some powders, a file, and a paper book. This drawer I beg of you to carry back with you to Cavendish Square exactly as it stands. That is the first part of the service. Now for the second, you should be back if you set out at once on the receipt of this, long before midnight, but I will leave you that amount of margin, not only in the fear of one of those obstacles that can neither be prevented nor foreseen, but because an hour when your servants are in bed is to be preferred for what will then remain to do. At midnight, then, I have to ask you to be alone in your counseling room, to admit with your own hand into the house a man who will present himself in my name, and to place in his hands the drawer that you will have brought with you from my cabinet. Then you will have played your part and earned my gratitude completely. 5 minutes afterwards, if you insist upon an explanation, you will have understood that these arrangements are of capital importance. It looks like there's a picture of Dr. Jekyll just about ready to take the potion. So he's trusting his friend Utterson with all these secrets. So he's got to find out about what he's been doing. And that by neglect of one of them, fantastic as they must appear, you might have charged your conscience with my death or the shipwreck of my reason. Confident as I am that you will not trifle with this appeal. My heart sinks and my hand trembles, and that bare thought of such a possibility. Think of me at this hour, in a strange place, laboring under a blackness of distress that no fancy can exaggerate, and yet well aware that if you will but punctually serve me, my troubles will roll away like a story that is told. Serve me, my dear Lanyon, and save your friend Henry Jekyll. It's his initials, HJ. P.S. I have already sealed this up when a fresh terror struck upon my soul. It is possible that the post office may fail me, and this letter not come into your hands until tomorrow morning. In that case, dear Lanyon, do my errand when it shall be most convenient for you in the course of the day, and once more expect my messenger at midnight. It may then already to be late, and if that night passes without event, you will know that you have seen the last of Henry Jekyll. Upon the reading of this letter, I made sure my colleague was insane, but till that was proved beyond the possibility of doubt, I felt bound to do as he requested. The less I understood of this farrago, the less I was in a position to judge of its importance, and an appeal so worded could not be set aside without a grave responsibility. I rose accordingly from the table, got into a hansom, and drove straight to Jekyll's house. The butler was awaiting my arrival. He had received by the same post as mine a registered letter of instruction, and had sent at once for a locksmith and a carpenter. The tradesmen came while we were yet speaking, and we moved in a body to old Mr. Denman's surgical theater, from which, as you are doubtless aware, Jekyll's private cabinet is most confidentially entered. The door was very strong, the lock excellent. The carpenter avowed he would have great trouble and have to do much damage if force were to be used, and the locksmith was near despair. But this last was a handy fellow, and after 2 hours' work, the door stood open. The press marked E was unlocked, and I took out the drawer, had it filled up with straw and tied in a sheet, and returned with it to Cavendish Square. Here I proceed to examine its contents. The powders were neatly enough made up, but not with the nicety of the dispensing chemist, so that it was plain they were of Jekyll's private manufacture. And when I opened one of the wrappers, I found what seemed to me a simple crystalline salt of a white color. The phial to which I next turned my attention might have been about half full of a blood red liquor, which was highly pungent to the sense of smell and seemed to me to contain phosphorus and some volatile ether. At the other ingredients, I could make no guess. The book was an extraordinary version book and contained little but a series of dates. These covered a period of many years, but I observed that the entry ceased nearly a year ago and quite abruptly. Here and there a brief remark was appended to a date, usually no more than a single word double, occurring perhaps 6 times in a total of several hundred entries, and once very early in the list and followed by several marks of exclamation, total failure. All this, though it whetted me curiously, told me little that was definite. Yeah, smelling something that you're not familiar with that has like a strong, pungent smell, I know that'll make your nose hairs just go up. Here were a file of some texture, a paper of some salt, and the record of a series of experiments that had led, like too many of Jekyll's investigations, to no end of practical usefulness. How could the presence of these articles in my house affect either the honor, the sanity, or the life of my flightly colleague? If his messenger could go to one place, why could he not go to another? And even granted some impediment, why was this gentleman to be received by me in secret? The more I reflected, the more convinced I grew that I was dealing with a case of cerebral disease, and thought I dismissed my servants to bed. I loaded an old revolver that I might be found in some posture of self-defense. 12 o'clock had scarce rung out over London ere the knocker sounded very gently on the door. I went myself at the summons and found a small man crouching against the pillars of the portico. "Are you come from Dr. Jekyll?" I asked. He told me yes by a constrained gesture, and when I had bidden him enter, he did not obey me without a searching backward glance and into the darkness of the square. There were a policeman not far off, advancing with his bull's-eye open, and at the sight I thought my visitor started and made greater haste. These particulars struck me, I confess, disagreeably, and as I followed him into the bright light of the consulting room, I kept my hand ready on my weapon. Here at last I had a chance of clearly seeing him. I had never set eyes on him before. So much was certain. He was small, as I have said. I was struck, besides, with the shocking expression of his face, with his remarkable combination of great muscular activity and great apparent debility of constitution, and last but not least, with the odd subjective disturbance caused by the neighborhood. This bore some resemblance to accepted rigor, and I was accompanied by a marked sinking of the pulse. At the time, I set it down to some idiosyncratic personal distaste, and merely wondered at the acuteness of the symptoms, but I have since had reason to believe the cause to lie much deeper in the nature of man, and to turn on some nobler hinge than the principle of hatred. This person, who had thus from the first moment of his entrance struck in me what I can only describe as a disgustful curiosity, was dressed in a fashion that would have made an ordinary person laugh able. His clothes, that is to say, although they were of rich and sober fabric, were enormously too large for him in every measurement. The trousers hanging on his legs and rolled up to keep them from the ground, the waist of the coat below his haunches, and the collar sprawling wide open his shoulders. Strange to relate, this ludicrous accoutrement was far from moving me to laughter, rather as there was something abnormal and begotten in the very essence of the creature that now faced me, something seasoned, surprising, and revolting. This fresh disparity seemed but to fit in with and to reinforce it, so that to my interest in the man's nature and character, there was added a curiosity as to his origin, his life, his fortune, and status in the world. These observations, though they have taken so great a space to be set down in, were yet the work of a few seconds. My visitor was indeed on fire with somber excitement. All right, guys. Looking at the pages here, I got like 2 more pages to go, but I think I'm going to stop here and go to a part 2. So stay tuned for that one, and have a nice day, everybody.